It's time for an extremely unpopular opinion. For my part, out of the reboot movies, I'm going to say the one I liked the most and the one I had the least negative experience watching was probably The Last Jedi. And it's the only one of the three that I rewatched, and I actually kind of liked it more the second time I watched it. That's not to say it's not a horrible movie, because it is a horrible movie. But I think it, at least for my part, I didn't think it was as bad as The Force Awakens or The Rise of Skywalker. Now, this runs completely contrary to the consensus. The consensus seems to be that The Force Awakens was awesome. Okay, it was a bit derivative. Okay, it was kind of cringy at parts because of how much it relied upon the previous movies, but it was awesome. And J.J. Abrams set up this amazing trilogy, and it would have been better than the original trilogy if not for Rian Johnson. And The Rise of Skywalker was a shit show solely because of Rian Johnson and trying to fix his problems. But J.J. Abrams, he had a great trilogy set up, and it's just Rian Johnson's fault. And don't get me wrong, Rian Johnson sucks. Rian Johnson is a terrible director. But in some ways, I kind of appreciate him more than J.J. Abrams. And we'll get into that in a second. So I think this is just rationalization. Out of the three movies, I think the most negative experience I probably had was Rise of Skywalker. And that's just because the editing was so bad, I actually felt motion sick. And I had to like close my eyes and look away. And there was even a part I had to get up and leave the theater for a couple minutes. I'd say though the most negative experience was The Force Awakens. It's very rare that a movie is so repulsive to me. I just want to leave part of the way through it. I think I tried falling asleep at different points during The Force Awakens. It's just like the most soulless focus group. We just want to make money film I've ever seen. Rogue One might actually be worse than it in some ways, in terms of being a focus group movie that was just a product. Like it wasn't art, it wasn't an attempt to create something, it's just a product. But Rogue One at least had good action scenes. You can't take that away from it. It at least had good action scenes, and it wasn't like as boring as The Force Awakens. But like out of the three, it's kind of a tie in my opinion, which is worse, The Force Awakens or The Rise of Skywalker. The Rise of Skywalker probably wouldn't be as bad as wouldn't be worse than The Force Awakens if the editing didn't make me nauseous. That's kind of a side thing. So The Last Jedi is kind of the black sheep. It kind of sticks out from the trilogy because you have two movies that are entirely based on fan service, are entirely based on trying to appeal to as many people as possible, that don't really have any substance to them. It's literally just, we're going to take fan favorites, we're going to take scenes from previous Star Wars films, and we're just going to cobble them together and make up a plot that's basically the plot from the original trilogy, and it's going to be great. Then we have The Last Jedi, and at a certain level, I have some respect for Rian Johnson as a director, because he just kind of comes out and does stuff. I mean, it's kind of the whole like Caesar thing. Do you prefer to be stabbed in the back or stabbed in the stomach? J.J. Abrams stabbed the audience and Star Wars in the back by kind of pretending, oh, I'm a fan of Star Wars, I care about this, I want to make a good Star Wars film. And Rian Johnson's just like, fuck all the fans, I hate you guys. You guys are a bunch of like cis males. I'm going to make a movie solely to piss you off. And at a certain level, I kind of respect that. I also kind of respect that they did something different for The Last Jedi. Now, different isn't necessarily a good thing. Oftentimes, it's better to just play it safe. Like with the Game of Thrones season finale, if they just had played it like really safe, like Jon Snow just became like the king, and it was just like a Disney or a Hollywood ending, that would have been way better than what they did. But in this case, I kind of like respect that they just said, we aren't going to make a fan service movie. We're not going to make a movie that's solely made for focus groups. Now, did this work out? No, it was a complete and utter disaster, and every part of the movie sucked. But because of that, it was less boring. and it kind of offended me less than the other two movies in the series. Unlike the other two films, when I was watching The Last Jedi, I was a little more engaged because I had no idea where the movie was going. Like, I for The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, it was extremely obvious what was going to happen. But for The Last Jedi, like, I had no idea what was like where it was going. Was Snooki going to die? Were Rey and Kylo Ren going to get together? Who were Rey's parents? What was Luke going to do? What the hell was going to happen with the ship? It was like actually kind of, I wouldn't say it's suspenseful because I hate all the characters, but I at least was a little bit engaged because I had no idea like where the film was headed. And you can say that's because of Rian Johnson's terrible writing and directing, but I'll kind of take that over the alternative where it's just the most derivative crap possible. And like I think the most interesting thing about The Last Jedi is it's really an art film. It's like an experimental movie. So like we're not going to have action scenes, we're not going to have anything Star Wars-y. We're just going to have this like Waiting for Godot style plot where you just have like one ship slowly chasing another ship for the entire duration of the movie. We're not going to have epic space battles. We're going to have, I guess, maybe one lightsaber duel, but that's about it. And it's kind of interesting. Like it's so weird to see a movie that they did something different with in this terrible reboot trilogy. Once again, I'm not defending The Last Jedi on the grounds that it was good, because it was horrible. It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But I was at least a little engaged. It was a little more interesting, like visually. I wouldn't say thematically because it had no themes. Just from a storytelling standpoint, I thought it was a lot more interesting than the other two films in the series. So I'll give it credit for that, because that's at least like something. Then there's this whole idea that like J.J. Abrams had set up this like great plot. It was going to be awesome. And he was just picking up the pieces for Rian Johnson. I don't think that was the case. I think people at the time, probably because there's so much unjustified hate against the prequels, were just like, oh, The Force Awakens is so good. And I think a lot of them haven't gone back and rewatched it or didn't really think about the movie when it came out, other than the fact that, oh boy, it's a new Star Wars movie. We got to go see the new Star Wars movie. And they were just completely uncritical about it. But like, it set up a lot of shit. Like, we don't know who the First Order or the Resistance is. We don't know who the New Republic is. We have no idea like what the hell's going on. And this is all like stuff that could have been fixed really easily. Like, for who the First Order is, someone could have just said, the First Order, the Imperial hardliners and their children who fled into the unknown regions and have returned to defeat, to finish off, to do what Palpatine could not and finish off the rebellion. Like, they could have just said something like that, and that would have explained who the First Order was. But instead, they don't explain anything. And I don't need a geopolitical treatise. I just need a basic explanation of what even is going on in the movie. And J.J. Abrams didn't provide any of that. There was really no obvious place the film was going. I guess he set it up so that Rey would be Luke's daughter, and that probably would have been better than what wound up happening. But like, there was all these like theories fans came up with, and just none of it paid off. Absolutely none of it paid off in The Last Jedi. And you can blame Rian Johnson for that. But like, from what I've heard, Kathleen Kennedy said you can do anything so long as it's feminist. And I mean, can you really blame him necessarily if they hired like the worst director possible who hates Star Wars and hates the fans and was given a blank check? I mean, what is he going to do? It's like that story of the scorpion. Okay, so there's like a story, and it's like a we'll say it's a beaver, and there's a beaver and the scorpion, and the scorpion's like, could you take me across the river? And the beaver's like, sure. And they almost reach the shore, and then the beaver then he feels a sting, and the beaver dies of venom, and it kills both of them. And before the beaver dies, he says to the scorpion, "Why'd you do that?" And he goes, "Because at the end of the day, I'm a scorpion, and stinging people is what I do." And that's kind of like the case with Rian Johnson. Like they deliberately gave him it. So how much can you really blame him for Disney's really bad directorial decision? And that being said, like the subverting of expectations was horrible, but like I said, it was at least a little more interesting. It was at least like when Luke threw the lightsaber, that was shitting on his character, but it was also kind of funny. It was funny in a way that like nothing in the previous two movies were funny. Like if you look at some aspects of this film as a parody, like Poe defeating the First Order Dreadnought basically by himself, it almost is kind of a parody of Imperial design. Like it's just that taken to its logical conclusion to the point where they have this giant ship that has virtually no guns on it. It is just a complete and utter mess. Yoda coming back and looking like he was on crack was like unexpected. The fact that Luke never actually read the Jedi scriptures, like, and then like the twist involving Luke almost killing Kylo Ren. Like these things all sucked, but it like I didn't see any of them coming. So it was like actually kind of engaging in a way. And while he had to clean up the mess in Rise of Skywalker, I'm not convinced that J.J. Abrams either didn't know what he was doing to begin with, or it wouldn't have been just as bad, but in a different way. And to a certain extent, for my part, and this is not really a reference to the movie at all, this is just purely a personal feeling, I was kind of happy that he shat all over the fans of the reboot, because people were defending The Force Awakens and saying how awesome it was. And then The Last Jedi came along, and I think retroactively it made people realize how bad The Force Awakens was. And that's something I kind of appreciated. I did enjoy all the salt that was spilled over The Last Jedi and how it really started to turn people against Disney. Once again, this has nothing to do with the quality of the film itself. The fact that the film was so bad and offended so many people that it ruined Disney's reputation. I mean, like I said, that's not really something you can give the film credit for or say it made it a good movie. But for my part, it's very hard for me to not take that into account when I'm thinking about this film. Also, I seem to remember the editing not being as bad in it as it was in the Rise of Skywalker. Like it felt like they actually filmed a movie. Like it was, like I said, it was a horrible movie, but they actually like filmed it and it seemed like it was more competently made. If you put aside the writing. And I think Rian Johnson, like, he screwed it up, but I think he had a chance to like semi-redeem the franchise. Like if when Kylo offers his hand to Rey, she had taken his hand and they had like worked together, that would have been an actual good subversion of expectations. That would have been interesting, and they could have taken that in so many different directions. And on principle, I'm going to hate the reboot because they killed the extended universe. And once again, it's not as if the extended universe didn't have a lot of crap in it. It's just the fact that they banned anybody from making material in it pisses me off. There was no reason that they couldn't have just had two separate continuities, the reboot continuity and the OG continuity, and they could just exist side by side. Like there was no reason for that. And I would just kind of hate this trilogy regardless of the quality. I'm just being honest with you guys. Because a lot of people aren't honest about their kind of personal biases. But I like that aspect of it. I thought the lightsaber fight with the Praetorians was probably the best action scene maybe in the reboot. The whole like hyperspace ship thing was dumb, but I don't know why that offended people more than like anything else, like the shit that happened in The Force Awakens or the shit that happened in Rise of Skywalker. So overall, I guess a lot of the reasons I think I enjoy it more is meta, just because it pissed a lot of the like the brain dead people who liked the reboot off, which is something I enjoyed. And the fact that it just wasn't as derivative and boring as the other two films in the reboot trilogy. Anyways, that was my semi-facetious, semi-satirical, semi-sincere thoughts on the reboot trilogy. I hope you found it interesting.